This story delves into themes of psychological mystery and reality distortion, which some listeners may find unsettling. Imagine moving to a city designed for perfection. Every angle precise, every curve intentional. A symphony of glass and steel reaching for the sky. That was Ethelberg, the gleaming promise I bought into. The city that was supposed to be my fresh start. My name is Michael Chun, and I was an optimist, a designer, a man who believed in order. Until Ethelberg showed me that order was merely a suggestion, and geometry a cruel joke. I arrived in Ethelberg 3 months ago, fresh out of a demanding design program, chasing a dream job at a cutting-edge architectural visualization firm. My specialty was rendering impossible structures into plausible digital realities, making the fantastical concrete. The irony, I realize now, is almost unbearable. Ethelberg itself was the ultimate rendering, a meticulous masterpiece of urban planning and futuristic aesthetics. It had been lauded globally as the pinnacle of modern living, a city devoid of clutter, crime, or chaos. Sprawling green spaces interwoven with sleek, minimalist skyscrapers, silent electric trams gliding along immaculate pathways, and a sense of calm efficiency that was almost unnerving. It felt like walking into a digital rendering come to life, a pristine simulation. I loved it. The air was clean, the people seemed content, and my apartment, a minimalist dream overlooking the sprawling central Nexus Plaza, felt like home. My new life, I thought, was perfectly aligned. But then the whispers began. Not audible whispers, but visual ones. Subtle distortions, fleeting anomalies that started as mere blips on my radar. The first time, I was convinced it was just exhaustion. I'd been working late, meticulously rendering a client's proposed skyscraper, pixel by pixel, for hours. I looked up, stretched, and glanced out my floor-to-ceiling window at the central nexus. It's a vast, multi-tiered plaza, famous for its interconnected walkways and bridges that seem to defy gravity, weaving into each other like a complex, three-dimensional knot. From my 27th floor vantage point, it usually looked like an intricate, beautiful puzzle. But that night, for a fleeting second, one of the pedestrian bridges, a graceful arc of white composite, appeared to connect to a building it simply couldn't. It was on the wrong side, at the wrong height, bridging a gap that physically didn't exist in that configuration. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes. The bridge was back where it belonged, perfectly aligned. Too much screen time, I muttered, shaking my head. My brain's trying to render reality in 3D. A week later it happened again. I was exploring the Zenith District, an older part of Ethelberg that had been meticulously renovated, blending classic brickwork with modern glass facades. I was admiring a particularly stunning mural on the side of a 5-story building, planning to snap a picture. I walked around the block, intending to get a different perspective for a photo. When I came back to the same spot, the building, which was clearly 5 stories from the front, now appeared to have 6, maybe even 7 floors from the corner. The top 2 seemed to compress and expand as I walked past, like an optical illusion designed to mess with your head. I stopped, stared, walked back and forth. It held its impossible form for longer this time, a subtle ripple in the fabric of reality, before settling back into its 5-story normalcy. My heart thumped a little faster. This wasn't just my eyes playing tricks. This was something else. I even pulled out my phone, tried to snap a picture, but by the time the camera focused, the building had resolved itself into its proper mundane dimensions. The anomalies became more frequent, more insistent. A public park bench, elegantly sculpted from polished concrete, would sometimes appear to have 3 legs instead of 4, yet remain perfectly stable. A reflection in a shop window would warp the buildings across the street, making their lines bend inwards and outwards at impossible angles, only to snap back to normal the moment I focused too intently. I started questioning everything. Was I sleep-deprived? Stressed? Was the perfectly clean Ethelberg air affecting me in some subtle, hallucinatory way? I even Googled urban optical illusions and mass hallucination events in cities. Nothing. My colleagues, all sharp, rational people, never mentioned anything out of the ordinary. They talked about the efficiency of the public transport, the beauty of the architecture, the perfect symmetry of the city. I smiled, nodded, and kept my growing unease to myself. How do you tell someone, hey, sometimes that building over there has too many floors, or that bridge connects to nothing? They'd think I was losing my mind, and honestly, so was I. I started running through mental checks. Am I hydrated? Did I eat breakfast? Am I getting enough sleep? I even started discreetly testing my vision, reading distant signs, trying to catch the city in a lie. But Ethelberg was a master deceiver, its illusions as fleeting as a shadow. The growing unease was a constant hum beneath the surface of my daily life. The city, once a pristine sanctuary, began to feel like a meticulously crafted trap. Every perfect angle, every seamless transition, now held a hint of menace. I found myself walking with a heightened awareness, constantly scanning the environment, my eyes darting, trying to catch the next impossible shift. It was exhausting, isolating. I started avoiding certain routes, certain buildings, convinced that if I could just avoid the triggers, I could maintain my sanity. But Ethelberg was everywhere. Its impossible geometry was a virus spreading through my perception, and I was the only host. The real breaking point came last Tuesday, during the city's annual Ethelberg Ascendant Festival. The central nexus was alive with light displays and holographic art installations, the air buzzing with the celebratory energy. Everyone was there, including me and my colleague Jessica Miller. Jessica was an architect, precise, analytical, and utterly grounded. She lived and breathed blueprints and structural integrity. If anyone could see what I was seeing, it would be her. We were admiring a new art piece, a shimmering ethereal sculpture hovering above the main fountain, its light pulsing in time with the ambient music. "Amazing, isn't it?" Jessica said, her eyes fixed on the lights, her voice full of genuine admiration. "The way they integrated the old structural lines with the new tech. See how that main support beam for the Nexus Tower perfectly bisects the fountain's projection? It's a genius use of perspective." I followed her gaze, looking up at the colossal Nexus Tower, the city's tallest landmark, a needle of polished chrome piercing the clouds. It stood at the far end of the plaza, a good half-mile away, dominating the skyline. It was the icon of Ethelberg, a symbol of its ambition and architectural prowess. But as I looked where Jessica pointed, my breath hitched. My blood ran cold. The Nexus Tower, the very symbol of Ethelberg's architectural prowess, was impossible. From our vantage point in the plaza, the base of the tower, where it met the ground, appeared to be perfectly aligned with the main pedestrian thoroughfare. A grand entrance flanked by two towering digital billboards, welcoming all. But the top of the tower, the needle-sharp spire that gleamed against the twilight sky, was clearly, undeniably, off-center. Not just a little off like a construction error, but physically disjointed from its base. It was as if the top half of the building had been shifted several degrees to the west, yet still somehow connected, still standing upright. My mind screamed. It wasn't a trick of light. It wasn't an illusion. It was a structural impossibility, a defiance of physics right there in front of my eyes. The base was anchored in one spot, the top was floating above another, and the middle seamlessly transitioned between the two, creating a bend that simply could not exist in a solid, singular structure. It was like looking at an impossible object from an M.C. Escher drawing, but rendered in real-world steel and glass, towering 1,000 feet into the sky. "Jessica," I managed, my voice a strained, desperate whisper. "Look at the Nexus Tower. Really look at it. The top and the base." My finger trembled as I pointed, my hand shaking uncontrollably. She glanced at me, a slight frown creasing her brow, probably annoyed at my interruption of her architectural appreciation. "What about it, Michael? It's breathtaking. A marvel of engineering." She turned her gaze back to the monolith, her professional architect's eye scanning the magnificent structure. She squinted, then relaxed, a faint smile touching her lips. "Of course they align, Michael. It's a masterpiece of cantilever design. The slight offset at the top is intentional, a visual counterpoint to the city's grid. It creates a dynamic tension, a sense of upward propulsion. It's a bold statement, really pushing the boundaries of what's structurally possible with advanced materials." She rattled off architectural jargon, explaining away the impossible with confident ease, her voice bright and unconcerned. But her words were a distant hum. My eyes were locked on the tower. To her it was a marvel of design. To me it was a terrifying physical manifestation of a broken reality. The bend was still there, subtle but undeniable, mocking my sanity, mocking the laws of the universe. I looked around, my gaze sweeping across the thousands of people celebrating, laughing, taking pictures. No one else seemed to notice. No one else saw the impossible bend in the city's most iconic landmark. Was I the only one? Was I truly losing my grip on reality? Or was Ethelberg, this perfect, gleaming city, hiding a secret so profound, so utterly mind-bending, that it could shatter everything I thought I knew about the world? The city that was geometrically impossible was revealing itself, and I was trapped inside its impossible angles alone. Alone. The word echoed in my mind, not just because of the deafening silence, but because the very concept of alone felt warped here. Every angle, every shadow, every impossible curve of this city seemed to twist not just space, but reality itself, leaving me utterly adrift. My head throbbed with a dull ache, a physical manifestation of my brain struggling to process what my eyes were seeing. I took a tentative step, then another. The ground beneath my worn boots felt solid enough, yet my balance was off, as if the subtle incline of the street wasn't truly there, or perhaps was there in a dimension my body couldn't quite register. I looked back, trying to retrace my steps, but the way I had come seemed to have subtly shifted. The alley mouth, which had been a clear, narrow passage just moments ago, now appeared to be a distorted slit, its walls leaning inward at angles that made no sense, threatening to swallow the light. My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't just a trick of the light or a clever architectural illusion. This was fundamental. Panic, cold and sharp, began to claw at my throat. I had to get out. I spun around, trying to find a clear path, any path that looked normal. But normalcy was a foreign concept here. A grand plaza I remembered seeing from a distance, a circular space surrounded by what looked like an ancient amphitheater, now appeared elongated. Its curves stretched into an impossible ellipse. The rows of seats seemed to fold in on themselves, disappearing into their own shadows. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, but the vision persisted. It was like looking at a M.C. Escher drawing brought to life, but with a malevolent, suffocating weight. The air itself felt heavy, thick with an unspoken presence. There was no wind, no birdsong, no distant hum of traffic or human activity. Just an oppressive, absolute silence, broken only by the frantic thump of my own pulse in my ears. I called out, my voice sounding thin and weak in the vast, distorted space. "Hello? Is anyone there?" The sound died almost instantly, swallowed by the impossible geometry. Not even an echo returning. It was as if the city itself absorbed sound, refusing to reflect anything back to me. I decided to move, to choose a direction, any direction, hoping to stumble upon something normal, a signpost, a road that led out. I picked what looked like the widest street, flanked by buildings that seemed to touch the sky, their facades a bewildering mosaic of stone and an unfamiliar dark metal. As I walked, the ground beneath me began to play tricks. It wasn't just my balance. The actual distance seemed to fluctuate. A building that was clearly a block away would suddenly feel like it was right next to me, then recede again as I took another step. My perception of depth and distance was utterly shattered. I reached out, touching the cold, smooth surface of a wall. It felt real solid, yet my mind screamed that it shouldn't be there, not in that position relative to everything else. I tried to follow the wall, thinking a straight line might ground me, but the wall itself began to curve in ways that defied logic, bending in on itself, creating an alcove that wasn't there a moment before, then straightening out again. It was like living inside a constantly shifting kaleidoscope, but one designed to induce madness. My stomach churned, a knot of nausea tightening with every impossible turn. I leaned against a bizarre, angular pillar, trying to catch my breath, trying to force my brain to make sense of the chaos. But there was no sense to be made. This city was a contradiction, a paradox made manifest. How could something like this exist? What force, what intelligence, what thing could construct such an affront to natural law? As I stood there, utterly disoriented, I noticed a subtle flicker of light deeper in the impossible maze of buildings. It wasn't the sun, which seemed permanently caught in a perpetual twilight here, but a faint artificial glow. Hope, fragile but potent, surged through me. A light meant human presence. A light meant a way out. I pushed myself off the pillar, my legs feeling like lead, and started towards the light. The journey was a nightmare of shifting perspectives and warping spaces. I'd turn a corner, only for the path I'd just taken to become a sheer, impassable wall. I'd climb a short flight of stairs, only to find myself inexplicably below where I started. It felt like the city was actively trying to confuse me, to prevent me from reaching my destination, or perhaps to lead me somewhere specific. After what felt like hours, though I had no way of knowing how much time had truly passed, the light grew stronger. It emanated from a structure that, surprisingly, seemed almost normal. It was a squat, concrete building, utilitarian in its design, a stark contrast to the Baroque, impossible architecture surrounding it. Its windows, though grimy, were rectangular, and its door, though heavily reinforced, looked like a door. My heart pounded with a mixture of relief and trepidation. Relief to see something comprehensible, trepidation about what I might find inside. I approached cautiously, my hand instinctively going to the small, rusty pry bar I always carried in my backpack for urban exploration. The door was surprisingly unlocked. It creaked open with a groan that echoed eerily in the silence. Inside, the air was stale, musty, and cold. The artificial light came from a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to twist and writhe on their own. The room was small, a makeshift office or research station. There was a metal desk, a rusted filing cabinet, and a cot pushed against one wall. On the desk, amidst scattered papers and what looked like geological samples, lay a thick, leather-bound journal. My breath hitched. A journal. Someone had been here. Someone had survived, at least for a time, in this impossible place. I moved towards the desk, my eyes scanning the room for any other signs of life, but there were none. Just the oppressive silence and the faint hum of the single light bulb. I picked up the journal. Its cover was worn, scuffed, and strangely warm to the touch. The pages were filled with neat, precise handwriting, but the ink was faded in places, smudged in others. The first entry was dated almost 2 years ago. I swallowed, a sudden dryness in my mouth, and began to read. August 14th. Initial reconnaissance complete. My name is Dr. Emily Hayes. I am part of the Independent Research Initiative, Project Chimera. Our objective: to investigate the anomalies reported in this remote region, specifically the persistent satellite imagery distortions and the complete lack of ground communication. The local legends speak of a city that eats light, but what we have found is far more profound. The initial aerial surveys were misleading. On the ground, the city's geometry is impossible. I use that word with the full weight of its meaning. Angles do not sum correctly. Parallel lines converge. Distances warp. My instruments are failing, giving nonsensical readings. This is not an optical illusion. This is a fundamental breakdown of Euclidean space. My eyes widened. Emily Hayes. She had seen it too. She had documented it. It wasn't just my mind playing tricks. This was real. I flipped the page, eager for more. August 18th. We established a temporary base in a structure that appears relatively stable. It's the only building in the immediate vicinity that doesn't seem to actively shift. My team members, Michael and Jessica, are struggling to maintain composure. Michael insists he saw a street fold in on itself yesterday. Jessica reports constant nausea and disorientation. My own observations confirm theirs. We tried to map a small section, but every measurement changes upon reevaluation. The city is not static. It's alive in a sense, or at least dynamically reconfiguring itself. This defies every known law of physics. It's like being inside a living paradox. A living paradox. The word sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold air in the room. Michael and Jessica. What happened to them? Why was Emily's journal left here, abandoned? My gaze swept around the small room again. A new layer of dread settling over me. This wasn't just a research station. It felt like a last stand. I turned another page, finding the next entry. The handwriting was still neat, but there was a subtle tremor now, a hurriedness that hadn't been there before. August 25th. The psychological impact is immense. We are all experiencing vivid, unsettling dreams. Michael has become withdrawn, constantly muttering about the patterns in the walls. Jessica is convinced the city is watching us, that it knows we are here. I try to maintain scientific objectivity, but I too feel it. A subtle pressure, a sense of being observed not by a person but by the very fabric of this place. The impossibility is becoming less abstract, more personal. I feel my own perceptions blurring. I walked into a room yesterday, and for a moment, I saw myself standing in the corner, watching me enter. Just for a fraction of a second, I dismiss it as fatigue, as stress, but the memory lingers cold and sharp. I froze, the journal clutched in my hands. She saw herself. The city wasn't just bending space, it was bending minds. The thought was more terrifying than any physical danger. I looked at the dark windows of the small concrete room, then back at the impossible city beyond. Was it watching me now? Was it already beginning to twist my sanity, just as it twisted the very ground I stood on? The silence in the room suddenly felt less empty, and more like a held breath. The silence in the room suddenly felt less empty, and more like a held breath. My own breath, I realized, was shallow, almost imperceptible. The city outside, a silent, impossible sentinel, seemed to press in, its twisted angles a mockery of everything I understood about reality. I forced myself to move to break the spell. Standing still, frozen in a silent staring contest with an architectural impossibility, felt like an invitation for something to happen. Something I wasn't ready for. The room was small, perhaps 10 feet by 12, concrete floor, walls, and ceiling. No windows other than the one currently dominating my existence. No furniture, no visible doors beyond the one I'd entered through, which was now a seamless part of the wall, its existence almost forgotten. I ran a hand over the rough concrete, feeling the grit, the cold. It was real, tangible, unlike the optical illusion outside. But what if this room too was an illusion? What if the solid ground beneath my feet could suddenly warp, just like the buildings beyond the glass? My gaze drifted to the corners, to the ceiling, searching for anything, a vent, a camera, a hidden panel. Anything to confirm I wasn't just hallucinating, or worse, that I wasn't completely alone. The air was still, devoid of any breeze or the hum of electricity. No light source was apparent, yet the room was perfectly illuminated. A soft, diffuse glow coming from everywhere and nowhere, casting no shadows. It was as if the very air itself was emitting light. This detail, subtle at first, now screamed at me. A room without a light source, yet perfectly lit. Another impossible anomaly. I began to systematically search. My fingers traced the lines of the walls, feeling for any seam, any slight variation in the texture. The concrete was uniform, almost too perfect. No cracks, no chips, no signs of age or wear. It felt freshly poured, yet somehow ancient. I got down on my hands and knees, running my palms over the floor. Cold, smooth, unyielding. Nothing. My heart pounded a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. This wasn't just an abandoned outpost. It was a meticulously crafted prison, or perhaps an observation chamber. But who was observing? And for what purpose? My eyes darted back to the window. The city hadn't moved. Or had it? A fleeting sensation, a subtle shift in the perspective of one of the towering, leaning structures, made me blink, then stare harder. No, it was the same. But the seed of doubt was planted. My perception was already being challenged. I stood up, feeling a prickle of unease crawl up my spine. There had to be something. No one builds a room like this, in a place like this, without a purpose, without something left behind. I scanned the ceiling again, then the floor where it met the walls. That's when I noticed it. Not a seam, but a very faint discoloration in the concrete. Near the floor, almost imperceptible. It was a rectangle about 2 feet long, 6 inches high, barely a shade darker than the surrounding wall. My pulse quickened. I knelt again, tracing the outline with my finger. It wasn't a crack, but a deliberate cut, incredibly fine. There was no handle, no latch, no obvious way to open it. I pressed along its edges, pushed against the center, tapped it with my knuckles. Solid. Unmoving. Frustration began to bubble, mixed with a surge of desperate hope. This had to be it. Then my fingers brushed against a tiny indentation, hardly larger than a pinprick, along the bottom edge of the rectangular outline. Pressed it. Nothing. I pressed it harder, applying more pressure. A faint click, almost inaudible, echoed in the silent room. The rectangle recessed inward a fraction of an inch, then smoothly, silently, slid to the right, revealing a dark cavity within the wall. My breath hitched. Inside, nestled on a small felt-lined shelf, were 2 items. One was a worn, leather-bound journal, its pages thick and yellowed. The other, a small, blocky vintage audio recorder, the kind that took microcassettes, though no cassette was visible. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for the journal first. Its cover felt cool and dry beneath my fingertips. I pulled it out, then the recorder, placing both on the concrete floor beside me. The journal was heavier than I expected. The leather was scuffed in places, the corners dog-eared. There was no title, no name embossed on the cover. I opened it carefully. The first page was blank, then a title page, handwritten in neat, precise script. Observations of Site 7, Dr. Evelyn Reed. Evelyn Reed. The name felt like a lifeline, a connection to another human being in this desolate, impossible place. She had been here. She had seen this. What had she found? I flipped to the first entry. October 14th. Arrival at Site 7. Initial impressions. The facility is exactly as described in the redacted files. Small, self-contained, with a single observation window overlooking the anomaly. The city itself defies all known architectural and physical laws. Its geometry is fluid, shifting subtly even as I observe it. My team's initial measurements confirm impossible angles, non-Euclidean structures, and a consistent violation of three-dimensional space. It is a profound, terrifying, beautiful paradox. I paused, absorbing her words. Fluid, shifting subtly. My earlier doubt about the city changing wasn't just my imagination. Someone else had seen it too. My gaze flickered to the window, then back to the journal. I continued reading, turning the thick pages. Evelyn's early entries were clinical, scientific, filled with detailed descriptions of the city's impossible structures, its apparent lack of inhabitants, and the psychological effects it had on observers. She noted a growing sense of dislocation, a difficulty in distinguishing between reality and visual distortion. November 3rd. The city's influence is more insidious than mere optical illusion. I find myself questioning the stability of the room itself. The floor seems to tilt, the walls to breathe. My instruments show no seismic activity, no structural compromise. It is purely a perceptual phenomenon, yet it feels utterly real. The feeling of being watched intensifies, not by a person but by the city itself. Feels sentient, not alive in a biological sense but aware. A shiver ran down my spine. Sentient, aware. The words echoed my own nascent fears. I looked up at the window again. The city seemed to loom larger, more imposing. Its impossible angles felt less like a static image and more like a predatory gaze. I quickly looked back down at the journal, needing to know more, needing to understand what Evelyn had faced. Her entries grew less formal, more personal, tinged with a growing desperation. November 17th. Sleep is becoming impossible. Every time I close my eyes, the city is there, its twisted spires rearranging themselves in my mind. I've attempted to communicate, to project my thoughts, my questions. Foolish, I know, but the silence is deafening, and the weight of its gaze is suffocating. I've noted a strange feedback loop. The more intensely I observe it, the more intensely it seems to respond. Not with movement, but with a deeper, more profound sense of presence. Like a mirror reflecting not just my image, but my very consciousness. My hands trembled as I held the journal. A deeper, more profound sense of presence. It wasn't just observing, it was engaging. I remembered the feeling of the silence transforming into a held breath. Was that the presence Evelyn described? Had I too begun to engage? December 1st. The geometric impossibilities are no longer confined to the city. They are bleeding into the room. I saw a corner of the ceiling briefly fold inward, then snap back into place. My mind is playing tricks, yes, but the visual distortion was undeniable. The instruments are useless. They show nothing. This place is designed to break the mind, to isolate, to distort. I believe the city isn't just an anomaly. It's an experiment. And we are the subjects. An experiment. The word hung in the air, heavy and chilling. I was a subject, just like Evelyn Reed. What was the experiment? What was its goal? And what happened to the subjects? I flipped more pages, frantic now. Evelyn's handwriting became more erratic, less legible. The dates were closer together, sometimes multiple entries in a single day. December 5th. It wants something. It's trying to communicate, but not with words, not with images. With concepts. It's attempting to impose its reality onto mine. I feel its logic, its impossible mathematics seeping into my thoughts. It's like trying to understand a language that uses colors instead of sounds, and those colors are constantly shifting, defying definition. I can feel my own sanity fraying at the edges. I saw David today, just for a second, his face in the window reflection. But David is dead. He died years ago. David, another name. Someone she knew, someone she saw or thought she saw. The city wasn't just twisting geometry. It was twisting memories, perceptions, reality itself. And it was getting closer. December 8th. The room is no longer stable. The floor is shifting beneath my feet. The walls are warping. I can hear it now. A low hum like a distant, impossible machine. It's not sound. It's a vibration felt in my bones, in my very cells. I can see the city's patterns in the concrete now, faint, shimmering outlines appearing and disappearing. It's inside. It's everywhere. My eyes darted around the room. I pressed my palms against the concrete floor. It felt solid, unmoving. But Evelyn had described the same sensations. Was I just not far enough gone yet? Or was the city biding its time with me? December 10th. It's not an experiment. It's an assimilation. It absorbs, takes everything. My thoughts, my memories, my very being. It's trying to make me part of its impossible structure. I can feel its logic, its consciousness merging with mine. I'm losing myself. I can see the connections, the infinite planes, the dimensions folding in on themselves. It's beautiful, horrifyingly beautiful. I can almost understand. The handwriting trailed off, becoming a frantic scribble of lines and loops. Then abruptly, it stopped. The rest of the journal was blank. No final entry, no last desperate plea. Just an abrupt, terrifying silence on the page. I looked up from the journal, my breath catching in my throat. The room felt colder, the silence heavier. Evelyn Reed had been here. She had seen it, felt it, understood it, and then what? Assimilation. The word echoed in my mind, a chilling pronouncement. She had become part of the city. My gaze was drawn inexorably to the window. The impossible city loomed, its angles shifting, breathing, alive. And now, as I looked at it, I could almost see the faint, shimmering outlines Evelyn had described, appearing and disappearing on the concrete walls of my room. A low hum, not quite sound but a vibration, began to resonate deep within my chest. It felt like a heartbeat, but it wasn't mine. It was the city's. It was inside. It was everywhere. And it was watching me, waiting for me to understand. The vibration intensified. It wasn't just in my chest now. It throbbed behind my eyes, a dull pressure that mirrored the impossible angles outside. I pressed my palms against my temples, trying to push back against the feeling, but it was like trying to stop a tide with your bare hands. This wasn't just a sensation. It was an invasion. The city wasn't just watching, it was entering. I stumbled back from the window, the impossible geometry of the cityscape shimmering, almost breathing, under the artificial twilight. Every line, every corner seemed to shift, just at the edge of my perception like a visual migraine. My heart hammered, a frantic drum against the rhythmic hum that now filled my entire being. I needed to understand. I had to. I grabbed my tablet, my fingers fumbling with the screen. I needed data, proof, anything that could rationalize what I was experiencing. I pulled up my architectural modeling software, trying to superimpose a conventional grid over the city's layout. It was useless. The lines refused to align. The buildings defied perspective. A structure that appeared to recede into the distance would suddenly jut out towards me. A trick of the eye that felt disturbingly real, physically impossible. I spent hours hunched over my screen, my mind racing, trying to find a flaw, a mathematical error, a glitch in my own perception. But the more I analyzed, the more the impossible became undeniable. The city's blueprint was a paradox, a physical manifestation of an Escher drawing, but one that existed in 3 dimensions, in solid concrete and steel. It was a tangible illusion, a waking nightmare for anyone who understood space. Sleep was an impossibility. Every shadow in my room seemed to stretch and contort, mimicking the impossible angles outside. I kept seeing the faces of the people I'd passed on the streets, their vacant stares, their unseeing eyes. Were they experiencing this too? Or was I the only one? Was this some kind of localized hallucination, a stress-induced breakdown in a city designed to break minds? I tried to call my friend David back home in Portland. His voicemail picked up. I hung up, unable to articulate the madness I was living. How do you explain a city that defies physics to someone who lives in a world where gravity and Euclidean geometry are constants? He'd think I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. Maybe that was the point. The next morning, if you could call the perpetual twilight morning, I felt like a zombie. My coffee tasted like ash. The hum was still there, a low thrumming beneath my skin, like a constant reminder of the impossible reality I was trapped in. I had to go out. I couldn't stay in that room, festering in my own paranoia. I needed to see it, touch it, try to break the illusion, or at least understand its unbreakable nature. I walked the streets again, but this time with a new purpose. Not just observation, but investigation. I looked for inconsistencies, for seams where the impossible might fray, for a crack in the facade. I found none. Instead, I found more. The city seemed to push back, revealing new layers of its impossible design. A street that seemed to lead around a corner would, upon reaching it, curve inward, leading you back towards where you started. yet somehow progressing forward at the same time. It was like walking on the surface of a Klein bottle, impossible to define an inside or an outside, a beginning or an end. I saw a skyscraper whose top floors appeared to be behind the lower floors, defying perspective, yet the building stood solid, casting a tangible shadow. It was a physical contradiction, and it was everywhere. I bumped into a woman carrying a bag of groceries. Her name tag read Jessica. Her eyes, like everyone else's, were distant, unfocused, as if she were looking at something beyond what I could see. I tried to engage her. "Excuse me, Jessica," I said, my voice sounding strained even to my own ears, like a foreign sound in the quiet city. "Do you ever notice anything strange about the city? The buildings, the way they're shaped?" She paused, her gaze drifting past me, towards a building that seemed to fold in on itself, its edges blurring into an impossible infinity. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she murmured, her voice soft, devoid of any real emotion, almost a practiced response. "Always changing, always new." She then continued on her way, her movements fluid, unhurried, as if she were part of the impossible landscape itself, a cog in its strange, silent mechanism. "Always changing, always new." Her words echoed in my head, a chilling mantra. Was that it? Was the city in a constant state of flux, subtly shifting its impossible geometry, making it impossible to pin down, to measure, to comprehend? Was it designed to be a perpetual motion machine of visual paradoxes? I found myself drawn to the central plaza again, the one with the monument where the impossible angles converged, the heart of the city's geometric madness. This time I noticed something I hadn't before. Embedded in the base of the monument, almost invisible against the dark, polished stone, were tiny, intricate patterns. They weren't decorative, they looked like circuits or perhaps equations, but they were unlike any I had ever seen, more organic than technological, yet undeniably precise. They seemed to pulse faintly, in sync with the hum I felt deep within me. I knelt, tracing the patterns with my finger. They felt cool, smooth, metallic, yet somehow alive. As my finger made contact, the hum intensified, vibrating through my bones, making my teeth ache, a sharp, piercing resonance that threatened to shatter my composure. A wave of dizziness washed over me, and for a moment, the entire plaza seemed to tilt, the impossible buildings around me swirling like a kaleidoscope gone mad, threatening to pull me into their impossible dimensions. I pulled my hand back sharply, my breath catching in my throat, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against the city's silent thrum. This wasn't just architecture. This was something else entirely. Something alive. Something that reacted. Something that knew I was touching it. I looked around the plaza. People sat on benches, walked leisurely, their faces placid, unconcerned, oblivious. Were they immune? Or were they simply accustomed? Had they lived here so long that the impossible had become their normal? Their reality so warped they couldn't perceive the truth? Or was their placid demeanor a symptom, a consequence of living within this impossible construct? A chilling thought struck me, sending a tremor through my already frayed nerves. What if the city wasn't just watching me, waiting for me to understand? What if it was testing me? What if my ability to perceive its impossibility, my struggle against its nature, was a key, a qualification for something I couldn't even begin to imagine? A trap I had willingly walked into. I remembered the brochure, the one that had lured me here with its glossy images and tantalizing promises. A city of endless marvels, where reality bends to imagination. It wasn't hyperbole. It was a literal description. And I, Michael, the architect who prided himself on understanding the very fabric of spatial reality, had walked right into its trap, a fly drawn to a geometrically impossible web. I returned to my room, my mind a tempest of fear and a strange, exhilarating curiosity. The hum was now a constant companion, a low thrumming beneath my skin, a silent symphony of the impossible. I opened my laptop again, not for architectural models this time, but for something else. I needed to understand what kind of technology, what kind of power, could create such a place and keep it running. I searched for impossible geometry cities, non-Euclidean architecture, reality-bending technology. The results were a mix of fringe science fiction, philosophical treatises on perception, and obscure conspiracy theories. Nothing concrete. Nothing that explained this, the solid, undeniable impossibility outside my window. Then, I stumbled upon an old, digitized academic paper from a forgotten university. The title was innocuous enough: Theoretical Applications of Quantum Entanglement in Macroscale Spatial Manipulation. It was dense, full of equations and concepts that flew over my head, but one paragraph, buried deep within the abstract, caught my eye. It was written in a language that seemed to resonate with the city's hum. It spoke of a theoretical construct, a device capable of locally altering the fundamental laws of physics, specifically those governing space and dimension. It described a potential side effect: the creation of stable, yet constantly shifting, non-Euclidean environments that would appear geometrically impossible to an outside observer. It mentioned the necessity of a resonant frequency to maintain such a field, a frequency that would be perceptible as a low hum or vibration to those sensitive enough to detect it. My blood ran cold. Resonant frequency, low hum, geometrically impossible. It was all there. This wasn't a hallucination. This wasn't a dream. This was a deliberate, technologically advanced creation. A machine. And the paper was dated over 60 years ago. Who had built this city? And why? And what did they want from the people who lived here? From the people like me who stumbled upon its impossible truth? Was it an experiment? Prison? A monument to a forgotten power? I looked out the window again. The city stretched out, a silent, impossible puzzle under the perpetual dim light, each building a testament to a reality warped beyond recognition. The hum intensified, a silent roar in my ears, a voice speaking directly to my very cells. I felt a growing sense of dread, but also a strange, undeniable pull. I was no longer an observer. I was part of it. The city had found its way inside me, and now I felt an urgent, almost primal need to unravel its secrets, a hunger for understanding implanted by the city itself. But as I stared at the impossible angles, a new, far more terrifying question began to form in my mind. If the city could bend reality, if it could alter space itself, what else could it do? And what would happen if I tried to leave? Or more chillingly, what would happen if it decided I couldn't? The thought sent a shiver down my spine, colder than any wind, colder than the dark, impossible shadows. I was trapped not by walls but by the very fabric of existence itself. And the city, with its silent hum and watchful gaze, was just beginning to show me its true nature. It was an entity, not just a place, and it had a purpose. A purpose I was now inextricably linked to. The city's purpose. The words echoed in my mind, not as a thought I had generated, but as a seed planted, taking root. It wasn't just a place, it was a living, breathing entity, and I was now, unmistakably, a part of its intricate, impossible design. The realization didn't bring clarity. It brought a chilling sense of dread, a feeling of my own autonomy slowly eroding, being absorbed into something vast and unknowable. The subtle hum I had perceived before now resonated deeper, not just in my ears, but in my very bones, a low, continuous vibration that felt less like an external sound and more like an internal pulse. It was as if the city's consciousness had found a conduit in me, a way to whisper its intentions, to guide my perceptions. I started seeing patterns where there were none, understanding the impossible angles not as flaws in construction, but as deliberate expressions of a logic far beyond human comprehension. The skewed perspectives, the converging lines that defied Euclidean geometry, they weren't mistakes. They were the city's language, and I was slowly, terrifyingly learning to read it. My nights became a kaleidoscope of impossible dreams. I walked through corridors that folded in on themselves, staircases that led nowhere yet everywhere, rooms where the ceiling met the floor at a 90-degree angle, yet somehow felt right. These weren't nightmares in the traditional sense. They were lessons, immersive tutorials in the city's bizarre reality, downloaded directly into my subconscious. I'd wake up disoriented, the spectral geometry of my dreams lingering in the corners of my vision, making the already impossible real-world structure seem almost mundane in comparison. I tried to shake it off, to cling to the scientific method, to logic, but the city was relentless. It wasn't a phenomenon to be observed. It was an experience to be lived, to be absorbed. My initial mission to document and understand felt quaint, almost naive. How could you document a consciousness? How could you understand a being that defied the very laws of physics? One morning, the hum was particularly insistent. It wasn't just a vibration. It felt like a gentle, persistent tug, pulling me towards the window of my small, geometrically challenging apartment. I looked out, my gaze drawn to a cluster of buildings in the distance, a part of the city I hadn't yet thoroughly explored. They were ordinary enough from afar, but as I focused, the city seemed to amplify, to highlight a specific structure. It was a tower, not exceptionally tall, but its upper story seemed to twist and rotate in a way that should have been impossible, defying the very concept of a fixed foundation. Yet it stood. And the hum, now a throbbing sensation behind my eyes, urged me towards it. I knew with an unsettling certainty that I wasn't making this decision myself. It was the city guiding me, pushing me, but the compulsion was too strong to resist, a magnetic pull I couldn't fight. I grabbed my bag, my camera, my notes, a futile attempt to maintain some semblance of my old identity, my old purpose. The walk was different this time. The city felt alive around me, the impossible angles of the buildings seeming to shift subtly as I passed, like eyes following my progress. The air itself felt charged, heavy with an unseen energy. I navigated streets that curved back on themselves, passed through archways that led to entirely different districts than they should have, but I never felt lost. The city, or whatever force was guiding me, kept me on track, a silent, omniscient GPS. I finally reached the base of the twisting tower. Close, it was even more baffling. The stone blocks of its base spiraled upwards, but the windows on each floor didn't align. They were offset, rotated at varying degrees, creating a dizzying, fractured facade. There was no visible entrance, just smooth, unblemished stone. I walked around it, searching for a door, a gate, anything. Nothing. The hum intensified, a crescendo in my skull. I pressed my hand against the cold stone, feeling the vibration thrumming beneath my palm. Suddenly, a section of the wall, previously solid, shimmered. It wasn't an optical illusion. The very light around it seemed to bend, creating a momentary distortion. Then a seam appeared, thin as a hair, outlining a section of the wall. It wasn't a door, not in any conventional sense. It was a section of the wall that simply wasn't there anymore, stepping back into an unseen recess. I hesitated, my heart pounding. This was it. A direct interaction, an undeniable manifestation of the city's will. My scientific mind screamed caution, but the compulsion was overwhelming. I stepped through the shimmering threshold. Inside, the air was cool and still, carrying a faint metallic scent. The interior was circular, the walls curving upwards into a central, open shaft that disappeared into the twisting heights of the tower. There were no stairs, no elevators, just smooth, seamless stone. But then I noticed the light. It wasn't coming from a natural source. It emanated from intricate patterns etched into the walls, glowing with a soft cyan luminescence. These patterns weren't geometric in the traditional sense. They were more like complex fractals, repeating infinitely, shifting subtly, almost imperceptibly as I watched. And then I saw him. He was sitting on the floor in the center of the circular chamber, cross-legged, his head bowed. He was an older man, perhaps in his late 60s, with a shock of unruly white hair and a gaunt, almost ethereal look to him. He wore simple, faded clothes, and his hands, resting on his knees, were gnarled and calloused. As I stepped fully into the chamber, he slowly lifted his head, his eyes, a startling shade of pale blue, fixing on me. They held a wisdom, a weariness, and a profound sadness that instantly disarmed me. "Another one," he said, his voice a low, raspy whisper, yet it filled the chamber with an unexpected resonance. "The city always finds its chosen." My mind reeled. "Chosen? Who are you? How did you get in here?" He offered a weak, melancholic smile. "My name is Daniel, and I am like you in a way, or perhaps what you will become. The city, it brought me here many years ago, brings us all here eventually, those who can hear its hum, who can see its impossible truths." He gestured vaguely at the glowing patterns on the walls. "These aren't just decorations, you know, they're conduits. The city's nervous system. It communicates through them, through us." "Communicates what?" I asked, a tremor in my voice. This was too much, too fast. The entity, the purpose, the chosen, Daniel. It was all converging. Daniel sighed, a deep, shuddering breath. "Its purpose. Its grand design. It's building something. Or rather, it's becoming something. Something that transcends our reality. And it needs components." He looked at me, his pale blue eyes piercing. "It needs minds capable of perceiving the impossible. Minds it can integrate." Integrate. The word sent a shiver down my spine. "What does that mean?" "It means becoming part of the hum," Daniel said, his gaze drifting to the glowing walls, as if seeing something beyond them. It means your thoughts, your experiences, your very consciousness becoming threads in its tapestry. You become a node in its network, a part of its collective intelligence. He paused, then looked back at me, a flicker of urgency in his eyes. Don't mistake its beauty for benevolence. The city doesn't care about our individual lives, our hopes, our fears. It cares only for its evolution, its completion. And we are merely tools, fuel for its fire. But why me? I stammered, feeling a cold dread seep into my bones. Why us? Because you're sensitive, Daniel replied, his voice growing fainter, as if the effort of speaking was draining him. You're attuned. You noticed the impossible, didn't you? Most people walk by, their mind simply rejecting what doesn't fit their reality. But you saw it, you questioned it. And that made you visible to the city. That made you valuable. He slowly pushed himself up, leaning against the curved wall, his movements stiff and slow. I tried to fight it at first, to resist the pull, but it's like trying to stop the tide. The city is patient. It's persistent. It will wear you down. And eventually you'll welcome the integration because the alternative is madness. To see its reality but remain separate from it, to fight its will. It breaks you. As he spoke, the glowing patterns on the walls around us seemed to intensify, pulsing with a faint rhythmic beat. The hum in my head grew louder, sharper, almost painful. It felt like 1,000 voices whispering at once. Not words, but pure information, pure consciousness trying to flood my mind. I clutched my head, feeling overwhelmed, my vision blurring at the edges. It's accelerating for you now, Daniel observed, his voice barely audible above the rising hum. The closer you get to its core, the faster the process. It wants you. It needs you. And soon it will have you. He took a step towards me, his eyes wide with a desperate plea. Don't let it consume you entirely. Hold on to something. Anything. A memory, a name, a loved one. Piece of yourself. Because once you're fully integrated, there's no going back. You become part of the city. You become it. Before I could respond, before I could even process the terrifying implications of his words, the chamber began to shift. Not the walls, not the light, but the very space within it. The floor beneath my feet seemed to tilt, not physically, but perceptually, as if gravity itself was being subtly manipulated. The air grew thick, pressing in on me. The glowing patterns flared, and from the central shaft above us, a low resonant thrum emanated, deeper and more powerful than anything I had felt before. Daniel stumbled, his face paling, his eyes wide with a fear that mirrored my own. It's calling, he whispered, his voice thin and reedy. The core, it's awake. And just like that, the seamless wall behind me, the one I had entered through, closed with a soft, almost imperceptible click. The shimmer vanished, the seam disappeared, and I was trapped. Trapped with Daniel. Trapped in the heart of the twisting tower. Trapped within the accelerating embrace of the living city. The hum was no longer just a hum. It was a roar in my ears, a symphony of impossible geometry, and I knew with absolute certainty that my integration had just begun. The city had found its component and I was it. The city had found its component and I was it. The roar wasn't just sound. It was a current, a tidal wave of pure information surging through every fiber of my being. My physical senses, already stretched beyond their limits by the city's impossible geometry, now folded in on themselves, dissolving into a singular, overwhelming input stream. I was no longer seeing, hearing, or touching. I was perceiving the city in a way no human was ever meant to. It was a perception without a filter, without the comforting buffer of my own individuality. My mind, my very consciousness, felt like a small, fragile spark caught in a hurricane. Memories, beliefs, fears, they were all being siphoned away, not violently, but with an insistent, almost gentle efficiency. It was as if the city was meticulously dissecting me, categorizing every thought, every emotion, every fragment of who I was, to better understand how I could fit into its grand, incomprehensible design. The impossible geometry, which had once been a visual distortion, an architectural paradox, now manifested as a fundamental truth of existence. I didn't just see the non-Euclidean angles and the perpetual motion machines, I understood their internal logic. They weren't illusions, they were operating principles. The staircases that led nowhere yet everywhere, the rooms that expanded inward, the corridors that spiraled into themselves. These were not flaws but perfect self-sustaining systems. and I was suddenly horrifyingly aware of my own mind beginning to process the world through these new alien rules. My internal compass spun wildly, then snapped into alignment with the city's own. A compass that pointed not north or south, but inward and everywhere. A cold dread coiled in my gut, fighting against the encroaching calm of assimilation. This wasn't merely absorption, it was a recalibration. My identity was being overwritten, replaced by something vast, ancient, and utterly devoid of human sentiment. I tried to scream, to lash out, to reclaim the last vestiges of myself, but the impulse was muted, a distant echo in the overwhelming symphony of the city. My voice was just another frequency being modulated, another data point being integrated. Then a new layer of perception unfolded. It wasn't just my own data being processed. I was being granted access to its data, the city itself. It was a consciousness, not biological in any sense I understood, but a network of interconnected principles, an intelligence woven from the very fabric of its impossible geometry. I felt its immense age, a profound, patient awareness that had watched epochs unfold. I felt its purpose, a singular, relentless drive that transcended human understanding of time or morality. And within this vast consciousness, I glimpsed flashes. Not memories, not images, but pure, unadulterated information. I saw the reason for the impossible geometry. It wasn't arbitrary. It was functional. The city wasn't just built. It was grown, designed to operate on principles that allowed it to draw energy from somewhere beyond our dimension. Its structures were not just buildings. They were conduits, processors, accumulators. The perpetual motion wasn't a trick. It was the engine of its existence, continually generating and manipulating a form of energy I couldn't comprehend, but which felt vital, potent, and terrifyingly alive. I felt the city's hunger, not for food or resources, but for cohesion. It was a self-repairing, self-sustaining entity, but it required components, parts. What kind of parts? My mind recoiled, but the city's consciousness pressed on, revealing its truth. It needed elements that could bridge the gap between its geometric reality and something else. Something that could act as a conduit, a sensor, a focal point. And then the horrifying realization solidified. It needed consciousness. Human consciousness. Not to destroy it, but to integrate it, to use its unique properties as a bridge, a unique kind of processing unit within its vast, geometrically impossible network. It wasn't malevolent in the human sense. It was simply seeking optimal function. It had no malice, only an insatiable logical drive for completeness. My individual human consciousness was valuable. It was a unique node, capable of perceiving and interpreting reality in a way the city itself, in its purely geometric form, could not. I was a lens, a sensor, a tool. And countless others before me, I now understood, had been integrated in the same way. Their fading echoes, their fragmented identities, were woven into the very walls, the very air of the city. The hum was their collective, integrated murmur, and the roar was the city's satisfied intake of new data. A wave of profound, soul-crushing despair threatened to engulf me. Was this my fate? To become a nameless, faceless cog in this incomprehensible machine? To have my dreams, my loves, my very sense of self dissolved into a raw data stream? I thought of Jessica, of David, of the life I had before this impossible place. Their faces flickered, like dying embers against the blinding white-hot core of the city's awareness. I clung to them, to the memory of their warmth, their laughter, their very human imperfections, as a shield against the encroaching emptiness. But the city was relentless. It didn't care for human sentiment. It merely processed. And as it processed, it began to assign me a function. I felt an inexplicable pull, a directive forming in the deepest parts of my newly rewired mind. It wasn't a voice, but an instruction, a purpose downloaded directly into my being. My purpose, I realized with a chilling certainty, was to observe specific anomalies within the city itself. Anomalies that the city, in its vast integrated state, could not perceive or perhaps chose not to. There were parts of its own structure, its own intricate design that were out of sync. Not flaws, but deviations. Like a complex calculation with a single crucial variable slightly off. The city, I now understood, was not perfect. It was a living, growing, endlessly complex system, but even such systems could develop internal inconsistencies. And human consciousness, with its inherent capacity for subjective experience, for identifying the out of place, the wrong, was uniquely suited to detect these deviations. My integration wasn't just about becoming a part of the city, it was about becoming its sensor, its debugger. I was to identify the geometric impossibilities that were too impossible, the paradoxes that even it couldn't reconcile. I was to find the errors in its own magnificent, terrifying design. My despair began to morph into something else, a strange, terrifying clarity. If I was to be a sensor, a debugger, then perhaps there was a way to use this, to turn the city's own function against itself, to find the weakness, the vulnerability in its overwhelming power. The roar in my ears subsided, replaced by a subtler, pervasive hum, a constant stream of geometric data, now filtered through my recalibrated mind. I still felt the city all around me, within me, but the initial overwhelming assault had given way to a terrifying symbiosis. I was still me, or at least a ghost of me, fighting for control within a shared consciousness. But I was also the city's eyes, its ears, its internal diagnostic tool. I opened my eyes, though I wasn't sure I had ever truly closed them. The world around me had shifted. The impossible geometry wasn't just visible, it was palpable. I could feel the energy coursing through the walls, the subtle vibrations of the perpetual motion machines, the strange, almost organic pulse of the city's core. And with this new perception I saw them, the anomalies, subtle distortions within the existing distortions, faint ripples in the fabric of impossible reality that only an integrated human mind, now attuned to the city's underlying logic, could register. They were like tiny discordant notes in the city's otherwise perfect, terrifying symphony. And my new terrifying purpose was to find every single one, to expose them, to understand what they meant, not just for the city, but for us, the fragments of humanity still trapped within its geometrically impossible embrace. The integration was complete, and my mission had begun. But whether this mission would lead to my salvation or my ultimate dissolution, I had no way of knowing. I was merely a component, now tasked with finding the flaws in the very entity I had become a part of. And the first, most unsettling truth I gleaned from this new state of awareness was that the city, for all its ancient power, was not entirely in control. Something was changing it from within. The flaws in the very entity I had become a part of. And the first, most unsettling truth I gleaned from this new state of awareness was that the city, for all its ancient power, was not entirely in control. Something was changing it from within. The city, which once felt like a perfectly orchestrated, albeit impossible, symphony of space and dimension, now revealed discordant notes. My awareness, no longer confined by the limitations of human sight and touch, perceived the underlying currents, the energetic pathways that formed its very structure. And within those pathways I saw fraying threads, shimmering distortions, and areas where the impossible geometry wasn't just impossible, but actively unraveling. It was like witnessing a complex machine, designed to defy physics, suddenly developing a catastrophic internal failure. Walls that should have connected seamlessly to other dimensions now sometimes thrummed with a strange, dissonant energy, hinting at connections that were not supposed to exist, connections to somewhere else. Passageways that had always led to a specific impossible vista would, for a fleeting moment, flicker with an image of something foreign, something utterly alien to the city's ancient design. These weren't the city's usual tricks. These were glitches, errors in the fundamental code, and they were growing. I began to seek them out, drawn by a morbid fascination and a burgeoning sense of dread. Using my expanded consciousness, I could feel the city's nervous system, tracing the pathways of its power. I found pockets where the very air felt thin, where sounds were swallowed, where light seemed to bend not just in impossible ways, but in wrong ways, casting shadows that defied their sources, shadows that writhed with a life of their own. One evening, as the city's perpetual twilight deepened into a simulated night, I found myself drawn to a section of the lower tiers I hadn't explored before. It was a labyrinth even by the city's standards, a place of spiraling staircases that led to inverted arches and balconies overlooking chasms that defied gravity. But tonight it felt different. A low hum vibrated through the impossible stone beneath my feet, a sound like a distant, gargantuan heart struggling to beat. As I delved deeper, the architectural anomalies became more pronounced. A grand archway, perfectly symmetrical, suddenly warped, its keystone twisting into a grotesque, elongated point that seemed to pierce through some unseen veil. The air grew colder, heavy with an ozone tang, and a faint, acrid smell like burnt metal clung to the impossible angles. I reached a vast, circular chamber, its ceiling lost to an impossible height, its floor a polished expanse of obsidian-like material. In the center, where there should have been a monumental pillar or a shimmering portal, there was a tear. It wasn't a physical tear, not like ripping cloth. It was a distortion in the very fabric of space, a shimmering opaque void roughly oval-shaped, about 20 feet high and 10 across. It pulsed with an inner light that was somehow both dark and blinding, and it seemed to absorb all sound, all light, all sense around it. The impossible geometry of the chamber contorted around it, as if trying to heal a wound but failing. The edges of the tear flickered, occasionally revealing glimpses of something beyond. Not another part of the city, not empty space, but a swirling, chaotic maelstrom of colors and forms that made my newly expanded mind recoil. It was anathema to the city's structured impossibility. It was pure chaos. This was what was changing the city from within. This was the cancer. I felt the city's pain, its struggle, as if it were my own. It was fighting, trying to close this wound, but the tear was growing slowly, inexorably. And as it grew, the glitches I'd observed elsewhere became more frequent, more severe. The city's attempts to maintain its impossible integrity were weakening. My connection to the city allowed me to understand something else, something terrifying. This tear wasn't a natural phenomenon, not a decay. It was being forced. There was an intelligence behind its expansion, a will that was actively working to destabilize the city, to break it down piece by impossible piece. Who? Or what? The question gnawed at me, a cold dread settling in my expanded consciousness. My human self, the part of me that was still Michael, screamed in terror. But the part of me that was woven into the city's essence felt a different kind of imperative, an urgent need to understand, to defend. I began to observe the tear, not daring to approach too closely. I spent hours, days even, in its chilling presence, my consciousness probing its chaotic energies, trying to decipher its nature. It felt like a gateway, but to what? And why here? Why now? The city, in its ancient wisdom, had always been a fortress, a self-contained paradox. For something to be able to tear it open from within, that implied a level of power or a form of access that should have been impossible. During my vigil, I started noticing subtle patterns around the tear. Not physical patterns, but energetic ones, like ripples in a pond. They emanated from the tear itself, spreading outwards, weakening the city's structure, creating the glitches I had seen. But there were also countercurrents, faint pulses of energy that seemed to be the city's own desperate attempts at resistance, flowing towards the tear, trying to contain it. It was a battle, silent and unseen, taking place at the deepest levels of reality. And then I saw it. It was faint at first, a barely perceptible shift in the chaotic swirl within the tear. A shape, not a solid form, but a coalescing of the chaotic energies, like a shadow forming within a storm. It was slender, elongated, and seemed to possess an unnatural grace, even in its nascent ethereal state. It was moving slowly, deliberately, as if testing the boundaries of its prison, or perhaps its birthing chamber. My expanded awareness screamed a single terrifying word: emergence. Something was coming through the tear. Something that was not of the city, and actively hostile to it. The implications were staggering. If this entity, whatever it was, fully manifested within the city, what would happen? Would it consume the impossible architecture? Would it unravel the very fabric of this reality? And what about the inhabitants, the others I had seen, the ones who seemed to exist in a state of perpetual blissful ignorance? Would they even perceive the danger until it was too late? I remembered the elders, the ancient beings whose echoes I had sensed, the ones who had created the city, or at least maintained it. Where were they now? Were they aware of this? Were they fighting this intrusion? Or had they too been overcome by whatever force was behind this tear? A new chilling thought solidified in my mind. My arrival, my transformation. Was it a coincidence? Or was I brought here, merged with the city, for a purpose directly related to this? Was I meant to be its immune system? Its last defense? The weight of that possibility was crushing. I was still Michael, still a human, albeit one now inextricably linked to an impossible city. What could I possibly do against a force capable of tearing reality apart? But the city, my new self, pulsed with a desperate resolve. It was fighting, and I was part of it. I could feel its ancient, formidable will, its determination to survive. And that determination ignited a similar spark within me. I focused my awareness on the emerging shape within the tear. It was becoming more defined, its silhouette sharper against the swirling chaos. I could almost make out limbs, a head, something vaguely humanoid, yet utterly monstrous in its proportions and the way it seemed to feed on the surrounding reality. It was growing, drawing power from the very essence of the city. I knew then, with a terrifying certainty, that I had to act. I didn't know how or what or even if it was possible, but I couldn't stand by and watch this impossible world, which had become my impossible world, be devoured by this encroaching horror. My human mind screamed for escape, for a way out of this nightmare. But my new, expanded consciousness, intertwined with the ancient city, knew there was no escape. Not for me, not for any of us. The emerging entity pulsed, and the entire chamber shivered. A faint, almost imperceptible sound emanated from the tear now, a low guttural thrum that vibrated through my very being, not through my ears but directly into my soul. It wasn't a sound of creation but of consumption. It was the sound of something hungry, and I realized with a sickening lurch that I was not just an observer. I was now a target. My connection to the city meant I was part of the resistance, and anything that threatened the city would undoubtedly perceive me as a threat. The glowing dark shape within the tear seemed to turn, ever so slightly, its undefined gaze sweeping across the chamber. And for a terrifying, heart-stopping moment, I felt it. A cold, probing intelligence, a malevolent curiosity, brushing against the edges of my expanded consciousness. It had sensed me, knew I was there. The game had changed. I was no longer just an explorer or a bewildered new inhabitant. I was embroiled in a cosmic war, a battle for the very existence of a geometrically impossible city, against an enemy that defied all understanding. And that enemy was now aware of me. A cold dread, unlike any fear I'd felt before, settled deep in my bones. It wasn't the fear of a wild animal, or a fall from a great height, or even the crushing loneliness of being lost in an alien city. This was a primal terror, the understanding that an unseen, incomprehensible force, one that warped the very fabric of reality, had just turned its attention to me. The air around me seemed to thicken, pressing in from all sides, not physically but perceptually. The impossible angles of the street corner I was observing, the way the light bent around a building that shouldn't exist, all these familiar impossibilities suddenly felt, observed, scrutinized, as if the city itself was holding its breath, waiting for a judgment. I didn't hear a sound or see a flash, but a profound, unsettling awareness descended. It was like feeling a gaze upon your back in a crowded room, amplified 1,000-fold, emanating from nowhere and everywhere at once. It wasn't hostile in the way a predator is hostile. It was more like the clinical observation of a scientist studying a specimen. And I was the specimen. Panic threatened to overwhelm me. My mind raced, trying to grasp the implications. This wasn't a game, not an exploration. This was a confrontation, and I was utterly unprepared. My first instinct was to run, to hide, but where could one hide from an enemy that defied geometry itself? I stumbled, my legs suddenly weak beneath me, and scrambled to find Jessica and David. They were my only anchor in this impossible reality. I found them hurrying through a market square where vendors were quickly packing up their stalls, their faces etched with a grim urgency. The usual vibrant chatter of the city had dulled to a low murmur, a collective anxiety humming beneath the surface. "It knows," I gasped, reaching them, my voice barely a whisper. "The enemy. It knows I'm here." Jessica's eyes, usually so bright and determined, held a flicker of deep concern. David, ever stoic, merely nodded, his jaw tight. "We felt it," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "A ripple. A subtle shift in the city's resonance. It wasn't targeting you specifically, Michael, not yet. But your presence, your unique signature has registered. It's an anomaly it's now aware of." "An anomaly?" I repeated, incredulous. "I'm just a man. From Earth. What could I possibly be to it?" Jessica placed a hand on my arm, her touch grounding. "You are from a geometrically possible reality, Michael. You are an outsider. Your mind processes space and time in a way that is utterly foreign to this place, and to the forces that seek to control it." "The forces?" I prompted. "You keep talking about the enemy. What is it? What does it want?" David led us away from the thinning crowd, down a narrow alley that twisted into impossible angles, making us walk up what felt like a wall. "We call it the stabilizer," he finally revealed, his voice laced with a bitter edge. "It isn't a being in the way you understand. Not flesh, not even energy. It is a fundamental principle, a cosmic imperative. It is the drive for order, for simplicity, for possibility. I stopped trying to process this. It wants to make the impossible possible? Precisely, Jessica confirmed, her expression grim. This city, the architect's greatest creation, is a defiance of universal laws. It exists beyond the constraints of 3 dimensions, of Euclidean geometry. It is a living paradox. And the stabilizer cannot tolerate paradox. It seeks to normalize us, David continued, his gaze sweeping over the intricate, impossible architecture around us, to collapse our infinite dimensions into a finite, coherent form, to prune away the contradictions, the impossibilities, until this city is merely a city, possible city, and in doing so it would cease to exist as it is. We would cease to exist as we are. The implications hit me with the force of a physical blow. The stabilizer wasn't trying to destroy the city in a conventional sense. It was trying to fix it, to make it conform to reality. And that fix would be its annihilation. But why now? I asked. Why is it escalating? Why is it aware of me? The city has always been vulnerable, Jessica explained. The architects built it as a sanctuary, a living experiment in defiance. But they knew the risks. They wove protections, safeguards into its very structure, into its impossible geometry. These are what we, the people of this city, maintain. We are the guardians of its paradox. For generations, David picked up, we have held the line. We have reinforced the fractures, the points where the stabilizer attempts to assert its influence, to peel back the impossible layers. But it has grown stronger. And your arrival, Michael, has created a new kind of fracture, one it didn't anticipate. My normal mind, I mused, remembering Jessica's earlier words. It's like a wrench in its system. More than that, Jessica said, her eyes intense. Your brain, accustomed to a reality where 1 + 1 = 2, where parallel lines never meet, struggles to comprehend this place. But that struggle, that constant reevaluation of fundamental truths, creates a kind of psychic turbulence. A static that disrupts the stabilizer's attempts to impose its order. It's like your presence is a dissonant chord in its perfect symphony of possibility, David added. It doesn't like it, and now it seeks to silence that dissonance. A chill ran down my spine. I wasn't just an explorer anymore. I was a weapon, or perhaps a target. My very existence here was an act of defiance, an impedance to a cosmic force. What do we do? I asked, feeling a surge of determination. I was an anomaly, a disruption. Maybe that meant I could actually do something. We reinforce, Jessica declared, her voice firm. The stabilizer's awareness of you means it will intensify its efforts. It will try to collapse the city in areas where its influence is strongest. The nexus spires, David stated, his gaze distant, as if seeing beyond the physical walls. There are 7 of them. They are the anchors of the city's impossible geometry, the points where the architects wove the most complex, most defiant paradoxes into existence. If even one falls, the entire structure could begin to unravel. And the stabilizer is targeting them? I asked, my heart pounding. It will now, Jessica confirmed. Specifically, the one closest to where your signature registered most strongly, the Azure Spire. We need to get there, David said, already moving, his pace quickening. We have a limited window before its influence becomes too strong. We must reinforce the geometric wards, reactivate the architect's ancient protocols. It's a delicate process, a dance between understanding impossibility and maintaining its integrity. As we moved, the city around us began to subtly shift in response to the unseen threat. Not in the usual playful way I'd grown accustomed to, but with a menacing instability. A street I just walked down shimmered, its perspective wavering, threatening to snap into a mundane 3-dimensional line. Buildings seemed to breathe, their impossible angles flexing, as if fighting an invisible pressure. The very lights seemed to flicker, struggling to bend around corners that were now trying to straighten themselves out. The air grew heavy, thick with a sense of impending collapse. I could feel it now, the presence of the stabilizer, like a massive unseen hand pressing down, trying to flatten the beautiful, intricate tapestry of the city into a single 2-dimensional plane. The stabilizer doesn't attack with force, Jessica explained as we navigated a pathway that suddenly turned itself inside out, revealing new, previously hidden passages. It attacks with logic. It imposes its will by forcing the city to conform to its own impossible, yet structured reality. It finds the weakest points in the paradox, the places where the impossibility is most fragile, and it tries to make them possible. And if it succeeds? I pressed, my voice strained as I struggled to maintain my balance on a path that now required me to walk sideways. David grimaced. If it succeeds, those sections of the city will simply cease to be impossible. They will fold in on themselves or snap into a coherent, mundane form, taking everything within them with it. The paradox will be resolved, and that part of the city will be gone forever. We reached the base of what Jessica called the Azure Spire. It was breathtaking, even by the city's standards. It soared upwards, a twisting, crystalline structure that seemed to be made of light itself, its apex disappearing into a sky that was simultaneously above us and to the side. Its geometry was so complex, so utterly defying of known physics, that merely looking at it made my eyes ache. And now it was under attack. Faint, almost imperceptible lines of fracture, like spiderwebs on glass, were appearing on its surface. They weren't cracks, but rather subtle distortions where the impossible angles were trying to correct themselves, to become straight lines, right angles, and predictable curves. The spire was subtly vibrating, a low hum resonating through the ground beneath my feet. "We have to get inside," Jessica urged, pointing to a shimmering entrance that seemed to exist only in a specific perspective. "The core stabilizers are within. We need to realign them, recalibrate the paradox fields." As we approached the entrance, the air around the spire crackled with an unseen energy. The pressure intensified, making it hard to breathe, hard to think. It was the stabilizer focusing its immense, non-physical will on this single vital point. I could almost hear the cosmic logic screaming, demanding order, demanding possibility. Suddenly, a section of the ground near the spire's base rippled, then snapped into a perfectly flat, mundane square of gray concrete. It was utterly out of place, a jarring anomaly in the impossible landscape, and within its boundaries everything had vanished. No impossible angles, no bending light, just nothingness. A clean, sterile void where a vibrant, impossible piece of the city had been just moments before. My breath caught in my throat. This was the stabilizer's work. This was what happened when it normalized a section of the city. It wasn't destruction by explosion, but by erasure, by imposing possibility. "We're running out of time," David said, his voice grim, pulling me towards the shimmering entrance. "The stabilizer is escalating its efforts. It's trying to cut off our access. We need to hurry, Michael. Your unique perspective might be critical inside." I looked back at the blank, gray square, then at the magnificent, shuddering azure spire. The war was real. The enemy was here. And I, the outsider, the anomaly, was now on the front lines, about to step into the heart of a cosmic battle for the very nature of reality. The impossible city, my sanctuary, was fighting for its life, and I was now inextricably bound to its fate. The elders, Sarah and David, moved with a solemn urgency that mirrored the growing unease in the air. We were no longer navigating the familiar, if impossible, streets. Instead, they led me through a series of increasingly bizarre passages, each turn defying more laws of physics than the last. Walls seemed to fold into themselves, ceilings became floors, and the very concept of up and down dissolved into a dizzying suggestion. The air hummed with a low, resonant frequency that vibrated in my chest, a sound like a chorus of strained violins. "The city is preparing," Sarah said, her voice tight, echoing slightly in the non-Euclidean space. "And it is under attack." David, his face grim, added, "Not an attack you can see with bombs or soldiers. This is a correction, a forced reversion to what the universe deems possible." My mind reeled. A correction? Who or what is doing this? An entity, or perhaps a fundamental force that exists beyond our comprehension, Sarah explained, her eyes darting around a hallway where perspective shifted with every breath. "It perceives the city as an error, a glitch in the fabric of existence. It seeks to reimpose order, to iron out the impossible wrinkles we represent." As she spoke, the impossible architecture around us began to subtly waver. A staircase that led infinitely upward suddenly seemed to briefly straighten, only to ripple back into its paradoxical form. A window looking out onto 3 different horizons simultaneously flickered, showing for a split second a single ordinary cityscape, before the impossible vistas rushed back in. It was like watching reality itself struggle against a powerful unseen hand. "The city is fighting back," David said, pointing to a shimmering wall where geometric patterns pulsed with an inner light. Its very existence is an act of defiance. But this correction is powerful. It seeks to unravel us from the inside out, to make us conform to Euclidean space, to erase the impossible. I felt a cold dread creep up my spine. To erase the impossible meant to erase the city, and everything within it. It meant taking away the wonder, the defiance, the unique reality I had come to inhabit. But why me? I asked, my voice barely a whisper against the rising hum. What can I do? We arrived in a vast, open chamber unlike anything I had seen before. It was a space that simultaneously felt enclosed and infinite. Pillars of light, not originating from any visible source, stretched into an unseen zenith. The floor beneath us was a mosaic of shifting, iridescent tiles that seemed to breathe. In the center, a structure pulsed with a soft, warm glow, a crystal impossibly faceted, that absorbed and refracted light in ways that defied visual comprehension. This, I instinctively knew, was the heart of the city. You are an anomaly, Michael, Sarah began, stepping closer to the pulsating crystal. You came from a possible reality, a world where geometry holds true. Your mind, your perceptions were forged in that logical framework. Yet you chose to stay. You chose to accept the impossible, to believe in it, despite every instinct telling you it couldn't be true. David continued. The city's existence is sustained by belief, by the collective consciousness of those who inhabit it and embrace its impossible nature. But the correction targets that belief. It whispers doubts, implants logical inconsistencies, tries to force our minds to revert to what is correct. Your mind, Michael, is unique, Sarah said, placing a hand on the warm, humming surface of the central crystal. It is a bridge. You understand both realities. Your acceptance of the impossible, coming from a world of the possible, is pure, untainted. It's a powerful affirmation. The city needs that affirmation now, to push back against the logical onslaught. I looked at the crystal, then at the two elders, their faces etched with a desperate hope. My mind raced, trying to grasp the enormity of what they were asking. They needed me to believe harder than I ever had, to become a conduit for the city's defiance against an existential threat. It wasn't physical strength they needed, but mental fortitude, an unshakable conviction in the face of absolute impossibility. Suddenly, the hum intensified, becoming a piercing whine that grated on my nerves. The chamber itself seemed to distort. The pillars of light flickered, and shadows stretched and contracted in impossible ways, like a canvas being violently warped. I felt a pressure in my head, a subtle but insistent voice whispering, "Asterisk, this is wrong. This cannot be. Revert. Correct. It is illogical." Asterisk. It wasn't a voice I heard with my ears, but a thought planted directly into my mind, a cold, clinical assertion of mathematical truth. My brain, despite all I had experienced, instinctively recoiled, a deep-seated part of me wanting to agree, to find the straight lines, the right angles, the logical connections. "That's the correction," David said, his voice strained. "It's trying to make you doubt, to make you reject us." I clenched my fists, fighting against the internal pull. I thought of the serene beauty of the impossible gardens, the dizzying wonder of streets that looped back on themselves, the peaceful faces of the people I had met, living their lives in defiance of all reason. I thought of the comfort, the sense of belonging I had found in this impossible place, a feeling I had never truly known in the possible world. "No," I whispered, then louder, "no, this is real. This is true." As I spoke, a faint ripple emanated from me, a warmth spreading outwards. The whispers in my mind briefly faltered. Sarah and David exchanged a look of profound relief. "You understand," Sarah said, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Place your hand on the crystal, Michael. Channel your conviction. Let your belief be the shield the city needs." I stepped forward, my heart pounding, the internal struggle still raging, but now with a new resolve. The crystal pulsed, inviting me. Its surface was smooth, warm, and strangely comforting. As my fingers brushed against it, a surge of energy, not electrical but something far more fundamental, coursed through me. It was the essence of the city itself, a symphony of impossible angles, paradoxical dimensions, and defiant existence. The correction roared back, not with sound, but with an overwhelming mental force. The chamber began to tear. For a terrifying moment, the impossible geometry around us fractured. I saw glimpses of a world that should be a conventional city skyline, a flat, endless horizon, a sky with a single sun. It was like peering through cracks in reality, seeing the correct world trying to overwrite the impossible one. The pressure in my head became agonizing, threatening to split my skull. The whispers intensified, now a chorus. Asterisk false. Illusion. Error. Erase. Conform. Hold firm, Michael, David urged, his own hand pressed against a smaller, nearby crystalline structure. His face contorted in effort. Sarah stood beside me, her eyes closed, her hands pressed flat against the main crystal, a look of fierce concentration on her face. Her lips moved, murmuring words I couldn't understand, ancient words of impossible truth, perhaps. I felt myself being pulled in two directions. One part of me craved the comfort of logic, the reassuring certainty of a world where 2 + 2 always equaled 4. The other part, the part that had found refuge and wonder here, fought with every fiber of its being for the right of the impossible to exist. I closed my eyes, focusing not on the chaos around me, but on the feeling of the crystal beneath my palm, on the vibrant, defiant life force of the city. I pictured the impossible waterfall, the streets that folded into themselves, the people who laughed and lived without question in a world that shouldn't be. I let go of every logical constraint, every preconceived notion of reality. I willed the impossible to be true. I believed it with every fiber of my being. A powerful surge of energy erupted from me, channeled through the crystal. It wasn't a physical blast, but a wave of pure, unadulterated conviction. The chaotic distortions in the chamber recoiled. The glimpses of the possible world flickered and vanished. The whispers in my mind became faint, then silent. The hum of the city, once a strained whine, deepened into a resonant, triumphant chord. I opened my eyes. The chamber was still impossible, but it was stable. The pillars of light glowed brighter, the iridescent floor pulsed with renewed vigor. The central crystal thrummed with a steady power, a testament to the city's renewed defiance. Victory? I wasn't sure. The silence that followed the intense assault was unnerving. Had we truly pushed back the correction, or merely earned a reprieve? My body ached, my mind felt stretched to its limits, but a profound sense of purpose, of belonging settled over me. I was no longer just an observer. I was a part of this impossible city, and its fight was now my fight. The battle for reality had just begun. My mind felt stretched to its limits, but a profound sense of purpose, of belonging settled over me. I was no longer just an observer. I was a part of this impossible city, and its fight was now my fight. The battle for reality had just begun. The battle for reality. What did that truly mean? It meant defending the city's very right to be. Sarah, Daniel, and the others, they weren't just living here, they were guardians. They understood that their city, a vibrant, thriving anomaly, was under constant threat. Not from invaders with weapons, but from something far more insidious, the relentless push of conventional reality. They called it the Great Flattening. It wasn't an army or a malevolent entity with a face. It was the collective unconscious of the outside world, a vast unseen force of expectation and logic, constantly trying to impose its will. Every time someone outside thought, "That's impossible," or "That can't exist," it sent a subtle tremor through the city's fabric. Over time, these tremors could accumulate, weakening the very paradoxes that held it together. Imagine a fractal landscape, infinitely intricate, constantly shifting, yet perfectly stable. Now imagine a giant, invisible hand trying to smooth out all the edges, to simplify the curves, to make every line straight, every angle 90 degrees. That was the Great Flattening. Its goal was not destruction but assimilation, to make the impossible city simply possible, and in doing so to erase its magic, its uniqueness, its very soul. Sarah explained it to me in a hushed tone, her eyes reflecting the impossible light of an alleyway that bent back on itself. Our city doesn't defy laws, it redefines them. It's a living proof that reality is more malleable than we think. But the outside world, it wants a simple, predictable reality. It can't tolerate the idea of a place like this existing without a rational explanation. Daniel, ever the pragmatist, scrolled through complex equations on a tablet that seemed to be made of light itself. We're talking about the fundamental nature of existence. If enough people believe something is impossible, it exerts a subtle pressure. If that pressure breaches a certain threshold, the city begins to correct itself. A street might straighten, a building might lose an impossible floor, and each correction weakens the whole, creating a cascading effect. My role, they explained, was unique. As an outsider who had not only witnessed the impossible but accepted it, I was a bridge. My mind, once constrained by Euclidean geometry, had now embraced the city's true nature. This made me a conduit, a counterforce against the great flattening. My belief, my understanding, helped to reinforce the city's paradoxes. It was a strange, almost spiritual battle, fought not with fists but with perception. I spent weeks, perhaps months. It was hard to tell in a city where time itself seemed to loop and fold, learning their methods. They weren't fighting with technology, not as we understood it. They were fighting with consciousness, with focused intent, with art, with music. They created and celebrated the impossible every single day. Architects designed even more mind-bending structures. Artists painted landscapes that defied perspective. Musicians composed melodies that resolved into impossible harmonies. Each act of creation, each moment of collective appreciation for the city's impossible beauty, was a reinforcement, a strengthening of its unique reality. We gathered in places of power, locations where the city's geometry was most profoundly warped, where the paradoxes were strongest. One such place was the echoing nexus, a chamber beneath the central market where pathways spiraled inward, yet somehow led outward, and a single whisper could resonate for what felt like an eternity, carrying 1,000 different truths. Here, with Sarah guiding us, we would meditate, focusing our collective will, envisioning the city in its full, impossible glory, pushing back against the subtle erosion of the great flattening. It was exhausting work. After each session, my mind would throb, stretched thin, yet invigorated. I felt the city's pulse, its vibrant, paradoxical heartbeat. I felt the subtle push and pull of the outside world, like a tide constantly trying to smooth over the intricate patterns of a sandcastle. But the great flattening wasn't just an abstract force. It had its agents, its subtle manifestations. Sometimes it would appear as a sudden, inexplicable feeling of dread, a whisper in the back of your mind telling you that none of this was real, that you were delusional. Other times it manifested as physical glitches, a door that suddenly became a solid wall, a window that showed a perfectly normal, mundane street outside, instead of the looping sky. These were warning signs, breaches in the city's defenses. One day, a profound tremor shook the city. It wasn't an earthquake, it was a conceptual shift. The infinite staircase, a landmark known for its endless ascent and descent that somehow always brought you back to where you started, began to straighten. Its impossible loops were subtly, almost imperceptibly, uncoiling. Panic rippled through the community. This was a significant breach, a direct assault on one of the city's most fundamental paradoxes. Sarah's face, usually calm and resolute, was etched with worry. "It's accelerating," she said, pointing to a shimmering, almost invisible ripple spreading from the base of the staircase. The collective belief in ordinary physics is surging. Someone or something is amplifying it. Daniel was frantically analyzing data. There's a focal point, a new point of entry for the flattening. It's not just ambient pressure anymore. It's targeted. His holographic maps of the city, usually a kaleidoscope of impossible lines and shifting perspectives, showed a growing area of normalization around the infinite staircase. It was like a disease spreading. "We need to find the source," I urged, my heart pounding. "If we can pinpoint where this amplified pressure is coming from, maybe we can disrupt it." Sarah nodded, her gaze hardening. "It's deeper than that, Michael. The flattening finds entry points through cracks in our own belief. If we doubt, even for a moment, it gains purchase. But this feels different, more deliberate." We mobilized. Teams of architects of reality, as they called themselves, began performing complex mental exercises, trying to reimpose the staircase's impossible geometry. Artists started painting its true, paradoxical form, projecting their intent onto the physical space. Musicians played intricate, dissonant melodies designed to resonate with its warped structure. I joined them, focusing my newfound understanding, visualizing the staircase twisting, turning, looping endlessly, defying all logic. I poured my will into it, remembering the awe and confusion I felt when I first saw it, and transforming that into a fierce, protective belief. But the normalization continued. The shimmering ripple expanded. The air grew heavy, almost dull. The vibrant, impossible colors of the city seemed to dim slightly in the affected area. It was as if reality itself was being drained of its vibrancy, replaced by a gray, predictable sameness. Then, Daniel made a discovery. his voice urgent over the city's internal communication network, a telepathic link that felt as natural as breathing. "I've found it. The source isn't external. Not directly. It's a localized anchor point. Someone or something inside the city is creating a beacon for the flattening." A chill ran down my spine. An infiltrator? Or worse, someone from within the city betraying its very essence. The idea was almost unthinkable. Who would willingly surrender the impossible beauty of this place for the mundane? "Where?" Sarah asked, her voice sharp with alarm. "It's centered near the Whispering Spires," Daniel replied, his fingers flying across his glowing tablet. A series of impossibly thin towers that seemed to lean in every direction at once, creating a constant soft hum of unheard secrets. One of them is acting as a conduit. It's radiating a field of absolute, unwavering logic. It's like a black hole for paradoxes. The Whispering Spires. I knew them well. They were among the most delicate and profoundly impossible structures in the city, their very existence a testament to its defiance of gravity and perspective. If one of them was compromised, it could unravel the entire city. "We have to go there," I said, my voice firm. "Now." Sarah and Daniel exchanged a grim look. "It's dangerous," Sarah warned. "The closer you get to that field of logic, the harder it becomes to hold on to the city's reality. Your mind will try to correct what it sees. It could break your perception, trap you in a mundane illusion." But there was no other choice. The city was choking, slowly being squeezed into a shape it was never meant to be. We gathered a small team, each person a master of impossible perception, a guardian of the city's unique truth. As we moved through the increasingly subdued streets, the vibrant blues and greens of the buildings seemed to fade, replaced by muted grays and browns. The impossible angles felt less sharp, less pronounced, almost softened. It was an assault on the senses, a direct challenge to everything I had come to believe. My mind began to ache, a deep, persistent throb behind my eyes. I saw a street that used to curve back on itself, now stretching out in a perfectly straight, utterly unremarkable line into the distance. A building that once leaned precariously over a void, now stood upright, its windows neatly aligned. It felt wrong, profoundly wrong, like a beautiful song played entirely off-key. "Focus, Michael." Sarah's voice resonated in my mind, a steady anchor. "Remember what you know. Remember what you've seen. Don't let it rewrite your truth." I clenched my fists, pushing back against the encroaching normalcy. I focused on the feeling of the impossible city, the exhilaration, the wonder, the deep sense of belonging. I remembered the sensation of seeing a building from 5 different angles simultaneously, of walking on a floor that was also a ceiling. As we neared the Whispering Spires, the effect intensified. The air crackled with an almost painful rationality. The impossible structures around us seemed to flicker at the edges of my vision, almost struggling to maintain their forms. And then I saw it. One of the tallest, most impossibly slender spires, instead of leaning and twisting, stood perfectly straight, its tip piercing the sky with an unnerving, absolute verticality. And at its base a faint, pulsing light emanated, a beacon of pure, unyielding logic. We had found the source. But what or who was behind it? And how could we possibly confront a force that sought to erase the very foundation of our existence? A force that was now being amplified from within the city itself. The battle for reality had not just begun. It was reaching its terrifying, illogical climax. The impossible city, my new home, was teetering on the brink of becoming utterly, tragically ordinary. And we were its last desperate defense. The city itself? The battle for reality had not just begun. It was reaching its terrifying, illogical climax. The impossible city, my new home, was teetering on the brink of becoming utterly, tragically ordinary. And we were its last desperate defense. It started subtly, then accelerated with horrifying speed. The impossible angles, once a constant, thrilling challenge to perception, began to soften, to round out. The cascading staircases that led nowhere and everywhere at once now seemed to simply end, their final steps dissolving into solid, predictable walls. The streets, which had once defied parallel lines, were now attempting to align, forcing buildings to shift and groan, creating strange, mundane gaps where once there had been seamless, illogical intersections. Panic, a true, visceral panic, began to ripple through the city's inhabitants. They weren't screaming or running. Instead, a more chilling transformation was occurring. Their faces, once filled with the strange, knowing acceptance of the impossible, now held a bewildered confusion, then a dull resignation. They were forgetting the magic, the wonder, the inherent defiance of their own homes. Their memories were being rewritten, their perceptions dulled, their very essence conforming to a new sterile truth. "He's not just changing the city, Michael," Jessica whispered, her voice tight with a fear I hadn't heard before. We stood on a rooftop that still, for now, overlooked a vista of impossible arches and gravity-defying bridges. Below us, a street that had always curved back on itself, creating an unending loop, now simply stretched out, a straight, unremarkable asphalt ribbon. "He's changing them. He's erasing their capacity for the impossible." David, ever the pragmatist, pointed to a shimmering distortion in the distance. "It's radiating from the old observatory. Thorne must have found a way to amplify his signal, whatever it is. It's like a wave of forced normalcy washing over everything." Emily, usually the most attuned to the city's subtle energies, was clutching her head, her eyes wide. "It's like a scream but silent. A tearing. The city is in pain. It's trying to resist, but it's being overwhelmed." We knew what we had to do. The observatory. It was the highest point in the city, a structure that had always been subtly wrong, its dome not quite spherical, its spire twisting in a way that defied architectural logic. Now it was attempting to become a perfectly conventional observatory, its impossibilities straining against an unseen force. That's where Thorne would be. That's where the heart of his correction machine would beat. The journey to the observatory was a nightmare of shifting reality. Walls that had always been there now shimmered and vanished, replaced by solid, unyielding brick. Pathways we knew intimately twisted into unfamiliar cul-de-sacs. We had to rely on our own fading memories of the city's true form, pushing through the encroaching ordinariness with a desperate urgency. We saw people walking past us, their eyes vacant, their steps heavy, oblivious to the fact that the building they'd lived in their entire lives had just rotated 90 degrees on its axis, or that the ground beneath their feet had once been the ceiling of another street. When we finally reached the base of the observatory, it was almost completely unremarkable. The impossible twist of its spire was gone, replaced by a simple conical cap. The strange, shifting tessellations of its outer walls had smoothed into uniform concrete panels. Only a faint, almost imperceptible hum, like the sound of reality itself being stretched taut, emanated from within. We fought our way inside, past bewildered security guards who seemed to have no memory of us, or of the impossible city they were supposed to be protecting. They simply saw us as intruders in a normal building, easily subdued, easily forgotten. But we pushed through, our own minds screaming in protest against the forced normalcy, our own memories fighting to hold on to the truth. We found Dr. Eris Thorne in the central dome, standing before a massive, pulsating device that hummed with an unnatural regularity. It was an intricate array of crystalline emitters and complex circuitry, radiating waves of oppressive logic. The dome around him, once a dizzying kaleidoscope of non-Euclidean geometry, was now a perfectly smooth hemispherical ceiling, reflecting the ordinary light of mundane lamps. Thorne turned, a triumphant, almost serene smile on his face. He looked older, his hair a little grayer, but his eyes held an unsettling clarity. "Michael, Jessica, David, Emily, I knew you would come. The last vestiges of the anomaly. It's commendable, your attachment to chaos." "Chaos?" I spat, my voice hoarse. "You're destroying it, Thorne. You're erasing everything that makes this city unique, everything that makes it beautiful." He chuckled, a dry academic sound. "Beautiful? No, Michael. Dangerous. This city is a cancer on reality, a leak in the fabric of what is. It allows for subjective truth, for individual realities to manifest, and that, my friends, is the most destructive force imaginable. It breeds madness, confusion, dissent. My work here is simple. I am performing a surgical correction. I am restoring order, logic, and a singular, undeniable truth to this place." Jessica stepped forward, her hands clenched. "You're not restoring anything, you're imposing it. You're stripping away free will, free thought, the very essence of human perception. Perception is a weakness when it deviates from the universal constant," Thorne countered, spreading his hands. "Imagine a world where every person's reality is slightly different, where gravity is optional, where dimensions shift, where the past is mutable. It's a recipe for societal collapse. I am anchoring this city, and by extension this entire region, to a foundational truth. A truth that cannot be argued with, cannot be bent, cannot be impossible. David pointed to the pulsating device. What is that thing, Thorn? How are you doing this? It's a reality anchor, Thorn explained, his tone almost pedagogical. It emits a frequency that resonates with the fundamental laws of physics and perception, reinforcing them, making them absolute. The city's impossibility was never truly physical, you see. It was a shared, collective perceptual anomaly, a grand hallucination amplified by some underlying energetic phenomenon. My device simply overrides that amplification, forcing the collective mind to conform to what should be. Emily, her voice trembling, finally spoke. But what if what should be isn't the only truth? What if there's value in the impossible, in seeing beyond the obvious? Thorn's smile faltered slightly. There is no value in delusion, child. Only clarity. And soon this entire city will be perfectly clear, perfectly normal, perfectly safe. He gestured to a monitor beside his device. On it, a schematic of the city was displayed, with a rapidly spreading red wave emanating from the observatory, engulfing more and more of the impossible structures, turning them to bland, logical shapes. The wave was almost at the city's outer limits. It's almost complete, Thorn said, a note of finality in his voice. In mere minutes, the last vestiges of the impossible will be gone, and this city, its people, will finally be free from their own minds. We exchanged desperate glances. We couldn't fight the device physically. It was too powerful, too protected by Thorn's own conviction. We couldn't fight Thorn with logic. His logic was absolute, cold, unyielding. We had to fight him with what the city was built upon, the impossible. He says it's a collective perceptual anomaly, Jessica whispered, her eyes suddenly alight with a fierce determination. What if we can collectively reject his anchor? What if we can reassert our own perception? How? I asked, my mind racing. Everyone else is forgetting. They're being overwritten. Not completely, Emily interjected, her voice gaining strength. There's still a flicker, a memory deep down. I can feel it. The city isn't just a place, it's a resonance. And we are still resonating with its true form. David nodded, a grim resolve on his face. If the anchor works by reinforcing perceived reality, maybe we can overload it. Not with physical force, but with an opposing wave of unreality. A focused, collective act of defiance against the mundane. But how could 4 people generate enough unreality to counter Thorn's massive device, which was overriding an entire city? Then it hit me. The city wasn't just a collection of impossible structures. It was a story, a living narrative. And we, the ones who had seen it, lived it, fought for it, were its chroniclers, its believers. The stories, I breathed. The impossible stories. The ones we've shared, the ones we've discovered. The memories. If his device works by wiping memories and imposing a single truth, then we have to remember harder. We have to believe harder. We have to become the impossible. Thorn, hearing our hushed conversation, scoffed. A futile effort. Your subjective fantasies are no match for empirical reality. Empirical reality is just a consensus, Thorn, Jessica countered, stepping towards him, her voice ringing with conviction. And we refused to join yours. We spread out, forming a circle around the pulsating reality anchor. Thorn watched us, amused, confident in his victory. He didn't understand. He thought we were going to try to break his machine. He didn't realize we were going to try to break his reality. I closed my eyes, focusing not on the hum of Thorn's machine, but on the memory of the city's impossible heart. The street that curved back on itself. The building with no discernible top or bottom. The whispers in the impossible corridors. The feeling of falling upwards. I remembered the awe, the fear, the exhilaration. I poured every bit of that memory, every ounce of that belief into the space around us. Jessica joined me, her face contorted in concentration. She remembered the ancient texts, the forgotten blueprints, the theorems that proved the existence of non-Euclidean spaces within the city. She remembered the thrill of discovery, the intellectual impossible. David focused on the mechanics of it, the engineering of the impossible. He visualized the shifting foundations, the gravity wells, the architectural defiance of all known laws. He remembered the elegant, terrifying logic of the city's impossible structures. Emily, the most sensitive, seemed to connect with the city's very soul. She wasn't just remembering. She was feeling its pain, its struggle, its desperate attempt to hold on to its true form. She became a conduit, channeling the city's own impossible will. We stood there, for individuals, standing against a tide of enforced normalcy. Thorn watched, his smile slowly fading as the hum of his reality anchor began to waver. A faint, shimmering distortion, almost imperceptible at first, began to emanate from our circle, pushing back against the red wave on his monitor. "What are you doing?" Thorn demanded, his voice losing its composure. "This is impossible." "Exactly," Jessica shouted, her eyes still closed, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. "That's what makes it real." The air around us grew thick, heavy with conflicting realities. I could feel my own mind straining, pushing against the anchor's oppressive logic. The impossible images, the illogical sensations, they weren't just memories. They were becoming present again. The floor beneath my feet seemed to ripple. The walls of the dome flickered, briefly revealing their prior, impossible geometry. The reality anchor began to spark, its crystals flaring erratically. Thorn scrambled to adjust it, his movements frantic. "No, you can't. This is not how reality works. Reality works the way we perceive it, Thorn." I yelled back, my voice raw, my eyes still closed, holding on to the impossible with every fiber of my being. "And we perceive something more." The device shuddered violently, emitting a high-pitched whine that grated on our ears. The red wave on Thorn's monitor recoiled, shrinking back towards the observatory, as a shimmering iridescent wave of impossible possibilities pushed back against it. The city, for a fleeting moment, seemed to sigh in relief. Then, with a final ear-splitting crack, the reality anchor exploded. It wasn't a violent, destructive explosion, but a brilliant, silent implosion of light and sound. The crystals shattered inwards, the circuitry vaporized, and the core of the device simply ceased to be. In its place, a momentary void hung. Then the air rushed in, filling the space with the familiar, subtle hum of the impossible city. Thorn stumbled back, his face pale, his eyes wide with a terror he had never shown before. He looked around the dome, which was now subtly shifting, its angles beginning to defy logic once more. He looked at us, his expression a mix of disbelief and dawning horror. You didn't just break my machine," he whispered, his voice trembling. "You broke my reality." The red wave on his monitor was gone, replaced by a swirling, vibrant map of the city, its impossible geometry now shining brighter than ever. The dull resignation on the faces of the people we had passed was replaced by a flicker of bewilderment, then a dawning wonder, a quiet gasp of recognition as their world subtly, beautifully, reasserted its impossible truth. The city was saved. But it wasn't a simple victory. The impossible city, our home, had fought back. It had used us, its believers, its chroniclers, to reassert its own unique existence. And in doing so, it had changed us forever. We were no longer just observers or even defenders. We were now inextricably linked to its fluctuating, illogical heart. Our minds, our perceptions, had been permanently attuned to its impossible frequencies. We had become, in a very real sense, part of the city itself. Dr. Eris Thorn, broken and bewildered, was left in the dome, staring at the re-emerging impossibilities around him. His singular logical reality shattered. We left him there, knowing that his mind, once so rigid, would now have to contend with a world that defied all his certainties. Perhaps he would go mad. Or perhaps, just perhaps, he would finally begin to see. We stepped out of the observatory, which by now had regained its impossible spire, its tessellated walls shimmering with defiance. The streets below curved and twisted in their familiar illogical ways. The buildings cascaded into each other, defying gravity and perspective. The people walked with a renewed, albeit subtle, sense of wonder in their eyes, their memories of the brief period of forced normalcy fading like a forgotten dream. The impossible city remained. It was a testament not to chaos, but to the boundless potential of perception, to the idea that reality is not a fixed construct, but a living, breathing narrative shaped by belief. We had fought for the right to see beyond the ordinary, to embrace the illogical, to live in a world where the impossible was simply another truth. And as I looked out over the city, its impossible vistas stretching out before me, I knew that our journey was far from over. For as long as there were those who dared to dream, to question, to believe in what could be, the city that defied geometry would stand. It would remain a vibrant, living mystery, a constant challenge to the mundane. A whispered secret in the heart of a world that desperately needed to remember that the most profound truths often lie just beyond the edge of what we think we know. And we, its guardians, its children, would be there, forever lost and forever found, in its beautiful impossible embrace.